The red light is on. That means we're here to make some podcast magic. I'm sitting here with Christian Reed of N1 Caliber Tools. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you today, Shawn?
I'm doing fantastic. So we always start off our podcast by getting a little sound level by asking our guests a question. So what did you have for breakfast today?
I didn't have any breakfast so far. My wife offered me a bagel, but thought I'd wait a little bit longer for lunchtime going on.
Yeah, you and me both. Like I was getting ready to have a Cliff Bar, and then realized that we might have a connection issue here, and then I went into that mode. So
panic, got to get everything set up.
Cool. So talking about your Kickstarter campaign today, it's listed as M1 Caliber, a better way to measure. It's a digital measuring tool, and as we sit today, you're at about $37,000 or $370,000, with quite some time to go, about a month left on your campaign, which is fantastic. Tell us about how this idea came about, your background, and what led you to this.
Sure, yeah. So I went to school at MIT, was always in the shop trying to make things. As you can see in my background, this is a small section of my basement, but I have a full machine fabrication shop in my basement. And since elementary school, I've just enjoyed making things. So the first part of my career after college was at Formlabs, which is a desktop 3D printing company where we made some really cutting edge products. You can see two of them behind me now, the two orange machines. We use them extensively for prototyping, but I think that was the first real taste of the idea of enabling people to make things that other ways they wouldn't traditionally be able to make. And while 3D printers are great, I think, we went through the hype bubble in 2014 and 15 with MakerBots of everyone thinking, oh, this is going to replace Amazon. Everyone will have a 3D printer in their house. But obviously had several flaws with that assumption, but I think one of the biggest ones is that there's still quite a bit of specialized knowledge you need to understand computer-aided design or CAD to make those devices. So in the background for quite a number of years now, I've really been exploring the most fundamental way people make things now, which is generally to go to a home improvement store, whether it's Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, Ace Hardware, whatever is close by. You can get a drill there, a saw, do a nice woodworking project, and make some whatever from the tools you have there. But I guess the other remarkable thing about that is just how little, I guess, the innovation has been in that industry of tools and home improvement, where I think people will be surprised to learn, a tape measure was invented in 1880, a circular saw, 1932. So a lot of these things have been around for quite a while. And, if we compare that to, say, the average aisle at Best Buy or something, you'd be laughable if you had an aisle out of 2000 and, even 15 and, walked into a Best Buy and saw that. Where at Home Depot, besides the advent of lithium-ion batteries and brushless motors, it's largely the same as it was many years ago. So I think that's what really founded our vision at Reekon Tools, which is how do we explore this opportunity and apply modern technology to provide either functional improvements, saving time, or other advantages to everyone from professionals who are doing this 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and the average DIYer who wants to pick up something and use it without the specialized learning curve or training that's traditionally required. So I think that's what really brought us to make the M1 Caliper, as well as several follow-on products which follow the same theme of enabling and lowering this barrier of entry to fabrication.
Right. So tell me specifically about this tool, the device itself, and how it works with the saw.
Sure. So the M1 Caliper is our first device, and I guess it's both categorized as a measurement tool. It's taking out of the cutting process a tape measure, where you would extend a tape measure, make a mark where you want to do it, line it up on the saw, and then make the cut on it. Where this, we've designed it to be pretty universal, so it works with a wide variety of saws. Doesn't matter if it's a Rigid, a DeWalt, a Milwaukee, it can clamp on it, the arm goes down, and it's pretty simple. You just slide the wood under it, and we have, I think, best highlighted on Kickstarter as well as social media. A lot of people see it and are like, I'm surprised this didn't exist before. But it's, again, not a particularly complicated device. It's just executed nicely. We're very thoughtful about the user experience while using it, and then has the professional build behind it to make sure it's actually, one, getting good results, and two, durable enough to survive on the job site conditions.
Definitely. So it looks like, you're kind of speeding through what it actually does. It looks to me like you're designing a way to make the Norm Abram rule of measure twice, cut once obsolete.
Yes, I think we've definitely used that. Get it right the first time with this, instead of, because again, we're taking variables out of the equation, where during the process of doing it the traditional way, you're taking out a tape measure, you're making a line. Are you cutting on the right side of the line? What side of the hash mark on the tape measure? What thickness pencil are you using? How's the saw blade lined up with it? Where here, we're removing a lot of those variables. And now once it displays on the screen, as long as it's set up and being operated correctly, which we've tried to simplify as much as possible, yes, it should be a very good cut. And, the first couple of times of demoing it, you get a little nervous behind the person using it, because the first thing they're going to do after cutting it is whip out their tape measure and confirm it's correct. But after, the fourth or fifth time of seeing that happen continually correctly, where people are like, oh, wow, that's pretty spot on. So,
this being an audio medium, let me describe this a little bit. So kind of imagine a C clamp or a wood clamp that looks like a spring-loaded way of getting onto the guide board of your table saw. And that has a digital readout on it. And then there's a wheel that kind of moves up over the board. And that wheel is much like, I don't know the name of the device, but something you would use to measure distance on the ground with a wheel.
Yeah, a measuring wheel, I think. For like surveyors. And
exactly. So same kind of idea is giving you a precise down to the 100th decimal point of exactly where that board is on the blade. It's a very precise device.
I think people are surprised with that too, that there are actually tolerances for printing even a tape measure, and this one can oftentimes beat out the absolute accuracy, as well as just repeatability. Sometimes not repeatability, but accuracy definitely can hold it longer than most tape measure printing can, which is pretty remarkable. And I think anytime someone sees a new device, especially in a very brand sensitive market such as tools, it's going to take quite a while to build up that trust. But also related to Kickstarter, we made about a dozen prototypes, and we made sure we got them out to people ahead of the campaign, such that, if you search it on YouTube, you can find at least 5 or 6 industry professionals, reviewers, tradespeople who have used the device and can give their honest feedback on it versus just believing what we're saying on the campaign, which definitely contributed to, getting over this initial hump, I guess, of does this device is cool, but does it actually work, or is it a gimmicky product?
Right. So I imagine, who is your core audience for this? Who is the person that's going to really be buying this at volume? And keep in mind, as of this conversation, there's 3,100 people who have pledged for this. So it's a pretty large audience.
To be honest, I think, Kickstarter is probably the worst possible place we could launch a tool like this. The audience of Kickstarter is not one, fortunately we find people and continue to find them, which is good. I think one of the more remarkable things, if you look at the community tab, just the breakdown of new backers who have never used Kickstarter before versus returning ones. And most campaigns, it's very much in favor of returning backers, where ours, I think we've had the uphill battle of taking people who are very involved in the trades, a professional carpenter, construction worker, and convincing them, one, this is a great tool to buy from a no-name company, and then two, to use Kickstarter, which for the first-time backer is a little confusing of, is this a scam? Am I entering, why haven't I entered my shipping address yet? So it's a very, uphill battle, and we definitely have a lot of feedback as well as customer support, just to tell people like, no, this is how Kickstarter works. We are delivering. And, I think that was one of our initial goals with handing out so many demo units, is to get over this burden, to show it's a real product. This is the real deal. We're not here to make a one-off product. We're here to build a brand and a company around the idea of this new generation of tool technology. So I think that's definitely been the goal for us. And, I think it's been met with pretty good success. I mean, you can see, again, we've converted a lot of those people for the first time to back a project on Kickstarter and put their trust in us. And now we have to obviously, deliver on that promise. And we're confident we're able to do that and give this exceptional product to market by the end of the year.
Well, I think from a design perspective and laying out your page, one of the challenges with doing any product on Kickstarter is you got to convey not only the functionality of what this thing does, but through a digital medium, you got to convey a sense of build quality and materials and touch and feel and durability. Where you're, like you said, not only a brand new product, but a brand new company. There's not like I can go to a Home Depot and pick up your drill and get a sense, oh, they made this drill pretty good. This new product's going to match this. So, when you look at it, design notes, this looks like a tool like that would be at home between like DeWalt and Ryobi, all similar design aesthetics, use of color, use of materials, it's in the language of what your competitors might be. And, the one thing that we're really incorporating a ton of in our modern campaigns is your use of GIFs over image really sells it for me. In the first scroll down on the page after the video, I'm seeing the clamp process, and I'm seeing how hard this guy is clamping it to the table, and you can tell immediately this is a durable piece of equipment. This isn't some cheap plastic clamp. It is really being horsed on there and not going to move at all. And then, when you see the board pass through it, you can tell that, you're using a really rigid spring mechanism or some sort of mechanism on this wheel. That this, again, is not going to be a weak point or break point. So in 2 images, I've already solved oh, wow, this looks like something that I would pick up at my home store. And just by the choice of images you're using there and the motion you're using, I can tell that this is durably made.
Yeah, and I think that was a big brand perception, as you rightfully said, is very important in a lot of industries, but tooling especially, that a lot of people will buy a tool even if it's the same exact function and features, even slightly less, just because it has a yellow label on it, a red label on it, a blue label on it. So I think that was, obvious, like anything, it's going to be an uphill battle for us to establish that. And, we've worked very hard on this brand to, it's fine if DIYers want to buy it and, buy it to use it once every couple of months, but we're really making it, designing it, and branding it towards professionals, as that's the highest standard to be. And that's the one we're going to try to meet and deliver with the quality of our product. And then if other people want to buy it, obviously they're more than welcome to, but we know we have that highest level of scrutiny internally when designing it, as well as robustness to perform in the field under real world job site conditions.
Yeah. And then, the problem, I think when you think about it, if a contractor or someone who is using their tools frequently is your target audience, you really got to be communicating that you're solving a problem for them. And I would imagine, probably the problem you're solving for them is time and accuracy, right? Is that the main thing you're going for?
I think they play hand in hand together. And, if when you look at this one-off, you're probably not going to save a ton of time making 2 or 3 cuts a day. It'll be convenient for you, and if you're new to using it, it'll certainly be valuable. But I think the people who are really going to benefit this, who are using it for 8 or 10 hours a day, and then those couple seconds save up, they start turning into minutes. The minutes start turning into hours, and then every week they start saving 2 hours. So that's going to give them a competitive advantage over other people, help them get other jobs done, work on more jobs. So I think that's really the value add here, as well as I think every day on social media, we're seeing new applications. We've been very active of posting new videos and demonstrations each day because it doesn't exist right now. So I think people have sometimes trouble conceptualizing how it works, but we're very excited to get in the field, and I'm sure we're going to discover 10 use cases we had never thought of that people realize, just because it's a convenient form factor. Again, this technology exists, but you'd have to be pretty clever about how to have it spring loaded, how to clamp it to a device, how to get a screen that you can see on it, where we've largely solved all these problems in an integrated device. Put it on if you need it. If you want to put it out of the way, take it off. Everything is very simple and straightforward, and really leads to the 2 points that you described, which is probably speed primarily, but also supporting it with the accuracy and precision to back it up, right? Things can be fast, but if they're crappy and giving you junk cuts, it's not going to be very useful and quickly become a novelty item versus a functionally useful device.
Right. Well, I would imagine, 2 of my good friends are home building contractors, and in their world, the job of making cuts for a frame out is usually brought down to one of the lowest guys on the totem pole, right? They're doing these cuts and feeding the craftsman, and when you got somebody who's making even the smallest little variances in how they're applying a line to the board or measuring or interpreting where the blade goes, that makes a big difference in the final quality of the build out. Those small details matter. Yeah. So let's loop back to something you talked about, you hinted on earlier, is your commitment to making multiple prototypes and getting those into the field for customer review. Talk to me about who you chose and how that process came about.
Sure. So I come from a very strong product development background, and know the skepticism of Kickstarter nowadays with extreme fiascos like Cool is Cooler to other
Mm-hmm.
smaller ones where, someone raises a couple $100,000 and can't deliver on the product, where I have been through multiple product introductions from R&D when you have early concepts to how do you actually manufacture it and know how difficult each phase is and the challenges to address it on here. So one of the points I think we want to communicate is, we're a new company. In addition to the product being unique, how are people not going to think, oh, is this a Kickstarter, or we'll just wait till it comes out down the road, which is not going to help us with our initial expenses to get it to that point. So I think brainstorming it quite a bit. I think something that builds up the confidence is obviously, one, sharing our backgrounds, which people can believe or choose not to believe, so we can just do our best to describe that. But another form of proof is actually showing that the technology you have works. So we can certainly do demonstrations. We put together a nice video, but even better than that is people they trust and know and have seen exercise in the trades, as well as for our internal development, where we find more local contractors. So I think that's kind of how we split it up into publicly facing ones. So people we gave a demo unit, said, give it a try out. We'll collect feedback, but we'd also hope that you could post a YouTube video, an Instagram post, or something about the device to help us promote the device itself, as well as share what you think of it, as well as internal testing, which we kept in the Boston area, which is going to everyone from cabinet makers to furniture makers to exterior construction, interior construction, finish, and just see how they use the device. And this was very critical with some of the earlier prototypes of figuring out what are people going to use it for, how do they like it, what doesn't work, what breaks on it. If they're trying to do the same thing but can't do it, does that mean we should add it as a feature? Are we missing something? So I think the combination of getting that early beta testing feedback, as well as validating the product by giving it to people and kind of dueling it, where we got beta feedback as well, but also gave public confidence. And, we were very clear with everyone. A lot of people say, hey, this is a 3D printed prototype, but I think people can see the vision in it and has, if it's already performing at this very high, exceptional standard now, it can go nowhere but up once the parts are even more refined and made in a much more controlled contract manufacturing environment. So I think those were kind of the two big takeaways we got from that. And I think we selected at this point, a lot of people just who would work with us. We get a lot of crazy requests from YouTubers like, sure, no problem. That'll be $20,000. We're like, well, we don't have the budget for that, and kind of just want the feedback. So we did start with people who are just interested. Hey, this is a cool product. It doesn't exist before. I'll give you one right now, and you can use it for whatever you want to test it out. And, we got pretty good reception with that. I think a lot of people were excited about it because it is such a new and unique product that they were willing to go out on a limb and help us out for it, versus other companies. If I'm making a new drill, for example, they probably charge us money for it because people are not super interested in seeing a new drill because they've existed for whatever X number of years. So
you had to do something very special. Yeah.
So convince them why it's worth their time.
So Norm Abram and the This Old House team was off the table, even though you're in Boston, right? We
do have, I think we want to, so we had the first group of reviewers who are mostly local contractors, as well as some tool review sites. I think our second phase, once we start getting production units, are the Norm Abrams and Bob Villas of the world, and we have gotten some initial interest with that. But we want to make sure there's no room for really screwing that up. So we're going to make sure we have the production units ready. And I think when we do our bigger shipping push in November, December is when we'll start to see some of those pop up in the news.
Yeah. I'd love to see this be the Tom Silva, what is this on Ask This Old House, when he brings the tool and, hey, how does this get used? That would be the gold standard here. So, you mentioned that this is the first in a wave of a pipeline. What kind of insights, not so much about giving away what's next for you, but, we work with several clients, especially in the exercise and photo accessory business, where those two industries have really embraced Kickstarter as their product development roadmap. We just launched a brand new line of bags with one of our clients who does camera bags this week on Kickstarter. And the idea being that baked into the business model is launching the next thing on Kickstarter before it goes to digital marketing and whatnot. So what kind of thought led you to a decision, especially knowing how little of your audience is on this platform, of using this tool to bring this idea to life?
I think we definitely took a risk and a plunge on here, because while there's some examples of tape measures and tools, they're really not they're more what I would call gimmicks. And this is, I think, a fine balance that I wouldn't say struggle with, but are very cognizant of in what we're doing now, that there's a very fine line and people are very sensitive to, the slightest deviations to either side of the line between what is a gimmick, a 5-in-1 whatever, and what is an actual like functional increase. And we were very careful on this, and definitely the beta feedback helps push it over on the functional side of things. But most of the examples we could find on Kickstarter, I would unequivocally call gimmicks. They're
Definitely.
Flashing, and some of them raise a lot of money. The bagel tape measure raised 1.1 million. There was a laser level that raised 550,000. But do you see any of those now? You can buy them maybe on a gadget website or something, but they're not going to sell in Home Depot because people will laugh at them if they see them there. And I think we were willing to sacrifice the gimmicky factor and maybe make more money on Kickstarter versus build and establish our brands by sticking very strictly to a professional device that's offering quantifiable functionality on it. So I think we definitely took a gamble going on Kickstarter, but we knew that it had the positive impact of awareness and people utilizing it as a platform, as well as getting the initial funds to do it. So we did consider either doing an internal pre-order or something else along those lines, but we had a pretty good feeling that we could convince people on Kickstarter, and I think we've been doing a pretty decent job so far. Again, we'll see where we wind up on it, but it seems like a cool platform to do it. And, there had to be a first time for a lot of products on there. So again, I don't know if there's the same interest in other professional products on Kickstarter, but I think we would pretty certainly consider launching some of our next products on Kickstarter because we'll have built up this audience. People are aware they have it there. Right. They'll start to get delivery of our products and see the high standards they were built and made to. And it's a good platform because it raises awareness. This is again, an industry that just hasn't had the same level of innovation as it has been for, Internet of Things, other consumer electronic devices. So part of the other goal is just raising awareness that there is a lot of innovation to be had here. And obviously we're going to try to take advantage of that as much as possible, but there's no reason that, other interested parties can't get involved either on it. So it seems good so far. I think we would still, have so far had a pretty, I won't say fully planned like success, but it's been good so far. And I think we would certainly consider it again for any subsequent products that we bring to market in the coming months and years.
Tell me a little bit about your ad strategy. How have you built awareness?
Sure. So I think like many things, we took the approach of like, we need the first big 2 days and then we need to follow it up with a sustainment plan after that. So again, this is where COVID, I think, helped us a little bit because we were originally planning on launching much earlier in the end of April, and then COVID kind of changed plans a little bit. We had the National Hardware Show, which we were planning on physically launching in Las Vegas, was moved to September. So that certainly changed our plans a little bit. So we took advantage of that time as much as possible. We got a lot more reviewers to help us out, which was definitely a big source of traffic on the first couple of days, and tried to time that up as well as possible with the launch. Two was to build up a mailing list. So we did run quite a bit of mostly Facebook and Instagram ads and we got the cost per click pretty low, as well as conversion to signing up on the mailing list. So I think in a month and a half, we got about 15,000 signups for the mailing list that we put together, and a pretty high, haven't got the final numbers quite yet, but probably 10 to 15% conversions from that list within the first couple of days on it. So I think that was definitely absolutely critical and imperative to the first day, like getting over that, adding a street credit by clearing 6 figures on the first day. And now the sustainment phase, we're kind of toying around with a couple different things to see how we can get this ad sustainment and then hopefully, wind up with close to, if not over $1 million by the end of it, by maintaining this 20 to 25K per day range.
Did you take advantage of the Notify Me tool on Kickstarter in the pre-launch?
I didn't really realize that was a feature until very close to the end. When I realized we generated the preview link and that you could start to see the followers who were adding to it and subsequently get notified. We only did it like a week before we launched, and then it went pretty quickly from 50 to probably low 200 or 300s, I think. But in retrospect, I think we would have done it a little bit earlier. But this also, I think, feeds back into our mailing list strategy of that we pretty intentionally didn't mention Kickstarter. We said there would be a pre-order June 16th, I think, on it, because we didn't want people to, and I don't know exactly if this was true or not, but we knew people sometimes, especially who haven't used it before, a negative impression of it. So we were very careful to kind of ease into that transition of pre-order from like 6 weeks out to week and a half out, then start to lightly mention Kickstarter and then be like, this will be live on Kickstarter tomorrow. And it seemed like that plan worked out pretty well, and we didn't get too much kickback. Again, certainly comments here and there of like, oh, Kickstarter, is this a scam or something? But we wanted to keep any kind of negativity in people's minds down until the very end on it. But there certainly would have been other channels to promote the Notify Me page if we had done that earlier than a week out from launch.
So, yeah. So, I think the other interesting decision is the longer run of the campaign. Your best practices are usually 30 days or under, and you're obviously running much longer. What was the decision-making process going into that?
I think that's good logic to have if you're making a product that's conducive to the Kickstarter audience. So a lifestyle product, such what you described, if it's photography based, a bag, something that's commonly found on Kickstarter, I think the audience is already there and they're going to be saturated with it in 30 days. For us, we figured there would be a little bit more of an awareness curve where we're, again, bringing the majority of our customers still at this point, I think, outside of Kickstarter. So we didn't think there would be that same advantage of getting urgency, and might help us again clear a various milestone on Kickstarter, which again we're already well past the point of what we need to launch this product, but now it's just a matter of awareness and something we can point back to as, again, this is the first half of the battle, and like I mentioned earlier on the conversation, probably the worst possible place we could be selling this product, but ultimately we do want to get into those places like Home Depot and Lowe's, and this would be the same way that you raise VC money. It's like that company raised a 1.3 million Series A. This will be like, oh, this company raised X amount on Kickstarter. So regardless of actually needing it, it's just a good thing to point back to as kind of street credit of, as well as establish a market. People are going to ask, who is going to be interested in this? And if we can show that there are, already 10,000 people who, put their faith in the company and pre-ordered it, that's just good leverage for us to continue to grow and expand our vision, mission, and products. Okay.
So last question. So you're shipping in December of 2020. What are your plans in between the end of Kickstarter and your shipping date? What are you going to be doing a post-campaign strategy, anything like that?
Sure. I think we're exploring a few options now. We'll definitely still want to collect pre-orders in the meantime, as undoubtedly there will still be a demand for them. And then we'll probably, pinnacle that off in probably early November, right around the holiday season, where we start to more aggressively push for pre-orders and hopefully sales not too long after that, once we start building up inventory. So I think that's the general concept of operations. Obviously, we'll continue our manufacturing operations to get it up and ready, but pending no crazy unforeseen circumstances with COVID, and we have done some pretty diligent planning to deal with the various contingencies that are possible based on that, just because of the volatility of the world and hence the supply chain and process. So we have pretty as confident as we can be that we have at least several options for various conditions that could pop up in the meantime, and we'll deal with it the best we can to achieve those goals. It's going to benefit everyone if we ship on time, and then we're able to start selling them through other channels, which is going to be potentially even more lucrative for us.
Awesome. Well, clearly a great idea. You're getting awesome traction on it, and if you're doing about 25K a day average, you're doing a lot right, especially in these times of uncertainty here. All right. Well, Christian Reed of Reekon Tools. This is the M1 caliber. It's kind of one of these no-brainers. As soon as I see it, I understand what it does, and we love it over here. Thanks a lot for everything today.
Yeah, thanks, Shawn. Really appreciate it. Great